In 1952, Egyptian Arabs rioted against their British rulers, and as they had in Syria, they took it out on the Jewish citizens.
In the Jewish ghettos of Cairo, people were attacked. Some of the guys were stabbed. A lot of people were killed in the ghettos, and that was major, catastrophic for them and very frightening.
Some of them, they killed them. It was the small city, they call it Harit al-Yahud, says that's for the Jewish. They went inside, they killed a family. It was terrible. It was terrible, terrible. We get very, very, very worried.
It was not for the Jew no more. It's not the future for the kids. We can still stay there and working and do business.
During 1952, that was like a lot of riots in the streets and things. That's when it became very bad for the Jews in Egypt. We were starting to get scared. We felt strange in the country. In their mind, Jews and Zionists are killers and they took away their land.
Then, in 1956, Gamal Nasser became president. He believed that all foreign assets should belong to the state and began to seize banks, factories, and stores. A vehement anti-Zionist, Nasser used this policy to punish the Jews, making all Jewish businesses property of the Egyptian government.
The policy at the time of Nasser was to plunge into and take the Jewish funds away from them. Just to give you an idea, the estimated wealth today of the community of Egypt is $5.5 billion still left in Egypt that the Egyptian government has taken over. Between hospitals, schools, old age homes, synagogues, land, etc.
It happened to my father. My father had 3 stores, textile wholesale. And after 1956, the stores didn't belong to him. They put a guard on these stores. It was very, very hard for him. He was always an independent person. To have a kid telling him what to do, it was depressing. And he couldn't take it.
I went down to the store in the morning on March 27. It was sealed. I went to my brother, he had the same problem. And we found out that it was Tamim. Tamim is that they took everything. They even came to my house and made an inventory of the dishes and plates. And my wife told the guy, but what if the kids break a plate or something? If they break a plate, put it in a box, put it in the corner. It's not yours. You got to account for it. So they did. And they opened her pocketbook. They took all our jewelry. They did what they want to. Nobody could argue with them.
I finished school in 1957 as a pharmacist. They put locks on the doors. I could not go into the lab where I was working. All the big stores were all owned by Jewish people. They nationalized all of them. People were taken out of their jobs or from their houses to the prison and out to the ship and out without a penny in their pockets.
Hundreds of Egyptian Jews were jailed, and more than 1,000 were expelled from the country as official enemies of the state.
We start right away to go to the Red Cross office in Cairo, and we fill up a form to move to the United States. We prepare everything, about 10 suitcases, and we put a Sefer Torah inside, and we leave to Egypt.
The Egyptian government's policies set in motion the flight of many of the Jews from Egypt. That was the end of a period in Egypt in which Jews had prospered, both in Alexandria and in Cairo, as part of a cosmopolitan community that did very well. But the war and its aftermath were disastrous for them, and many of the Jews at that point had to leave.
In 1940, Rabbi Kalmanovitz had joined forces with Isaac Shalom, raising funds and pressuring government officials to rescue European Jews. In the 1950s, he set out to rescue Arab Jews as well, lobbying Congress and the president. Now he decided to personally sponsor as many young men as he could to study at his yeshiva in Brooklyn. The rabbis at Yeshivat Ahava V'Ahava in Cairo sent word to Rabbi Kalmanowitz that they were afraid for their students' safety. He set out to bring them to Brooklyn, appealing to Congress to pass an emergency immigration bill to let the young men in.
A story came that a big rabbi from Mirror Yeshiva in New York sent a big lawyer to Egypt to get boys to Brooklyn to make them rabbis. At that time, my son Albert was in Collège des Frères, that college of priests, Christian. And my son is nervous when he saw the Arab insult, curse the Jews. They beat him. Sometimes he came blood in his face. I was very upset and I don't want to do. I want to take him out from the school. Big lawyer told me he has to be 16 years to go to New York. My son was 14. He don't want to take him. I beg him to do exception and take my son. He didn't want it. We called New York and I spoke Hebrew with Rabbi Kalmanovich. I explained him the situation and I begged him to take him. I told him I don't want you to spend a penny on him. I am willing to pay every expense you do for my son, I paid. In June '57, I sent my son Albert to New York.
It was exciting, you know, you go to America. My father tells me, go to the yeshiva. So Rabbi Kalmanowitz called Senator Javits of New York. He knew him well. He said, I have to get some Jews boys out of Egypt. He said, okay, get me who you want. He brought in about 27, 28 boys from Egypt. I was the youngest.
My age was 16 and a half years old. And I was approached to come to Mir Yeshiva while I was working in Egypt. And I was a volunteer at the rabbinate in Cairo, helping out Jewish people to emigrate and to leave Egypt as fast as possible. The government decided to go after the boys that were doing this work. I was arrested, and they told me I needed to sign a paper that I'm a spy for Israel. Otherwise, heavy interrogation, beating with bamboo sticks on my feet, etc. I refused to sign it, and I was evicted from the country, and I was sent out on a stateless passport, which is the water, the oceans is my country. I had no country left. And at the same time, they gave me a document called the laissez-passer. And it was stamped on it, dangerous for the public security. Rabbi Kalmanovich helped me for sure. I consider him an angel, a saving angel.
Between August 1956 and September 1957, Rabbi Kalmanowitz rescued 39 boys from Syria, Egypt, and Morocco. But their new life at the yeshiva felt foreign to them.
We used to sleep like 6, 7 in a room, bunk beds, and it was cold. They used to give us $1 a week. We used to write mail with it, wash our clothes with it, take haircuts with it. It was Ashkenaz food. Saturday, we used to eat frozen chicken. Every Shabbat during the day, they used to give us frozen chicken because they couldn't heat it up.
The yeshiva was very poor. The food was very simple. In Syria, we never saw dark bread, pumpernickel, and the peanut butter. What's peanut butter in the morning to eat? The peanut butter with, with jelly. We don't use that.
When I first came, I didn't speak English. I didn't speak a word. I didn't know any Syrian girls. They didn't want to talk to me. I was a banana boat. I got depressed.
I ended up walking away from the yeshiva because I felt that I needed to earn money so I can bring my family to the country. I left the Mir Yeshiva and I slept on a bench in Settler Park for 48 hours without any food in my mouth in the wintertime. Eventually, I walked down towards Bay Parkway. By divine providence, I walked out on 66th Street, and Sophie Maslaton happened to have gone at that moment throwing her garbage. And I'm walking by, tears in my eyes, hungry, and she says, "Kid, what are you so upset? Why are you crying?" why don't you come in, I'll give you breakfast, and then we'll sit down and talk. And she called Isidore Dayan. And he arranged for me immediately, and he proceeded to take care of whatever I needed for about a year and a half on the expense of Ahiezer, which I am very grateful and very thankful that they were there for me. Without them, really, I would have been totally lost.
The Syrian Jews of Brooklyn embraced Rabbi Kalmanowitz's boys with open arms. In turn, the boys would work hard, raise families, and give back to the Mir Yeshiva and the community that helped them so much. The Six-Day War changed the political climate throughout the Middle East. Nowhere was safe for the Jews. After thousands of years of living in Arab lands, more than 500,000 Jews were in search of a new home.
Every single Jew thought about leaving. It was unbelievable, like a big tree that they shook, and all the birds, they went all over the world. Brazil, Mexico, Panama. We gathered from Halab, from Damascus, and from Beirut. So now, wherever you go in all the world, you see Middle Eastern Jewish people living in everywhere.
Young men and women were emigrating from Lebanon to the New World, and my parents decided to go to Mexico. It took 6 years, 6 arduous years, but finally we received the okay to emigrate. It was Pesach, Erev Pesach. I was 10, and we received the news. Of course, my father cried, my mother cried. I remember we celebrated that Pesach, and we would say the Mish'arotam, Serot Besilotam al Shichmam, and we were asked, Mnen Jaye, where are you coming from? We would say, from Misraim, from Egypt. Lawen Rayeh, where are you going? The answer is usually to Yerushalayim. But that night of Pesach, as we celebrated it, we said something else. We were asked, Mnen Jaye, where are you coming from? We said, from Beirut. Lawen Rayeh, where are you going to? We said, to Mexico. So we felt as though we were back in Egypt, as our forefathers.
بشلح برو اتعام بلونا حام إلهيم ديرخ إرس بلشتيم كي كروب هوكي أمر إلهيم بين النحيم هام بالقتام الحمام بشابو مصرايمة ويسيب إلهيم اتعام ديرخ مدبار يمسوف بحموشيم علو بن إسرائيل ميرس مصرايم.
So Mr. Haber told us what it was like for his family to leave. It wasn't so easy for most families to leave. There was a lot of red tape involved. And even though the Egyptian government wasn't making it easy for you to live there, they also didn't make it easy for you to leave. A lot of documentation was necessary, and getting these documents was a bit tricky at times. Mr. Clem Soffer, even though he was just a teenager at the time, he was well connected with the deputy chief rabbi at the time, who was Acham Abraham Shweka, who saw Clem's knowledge and talents and was able to call him into the rabbinate to help out. Clem, can you please tell us about that?
B'Shem Hashem b'na'aseh v'nasliach. The name of all names, we will do and we will accomplish. Rabbi Shweka was my rabbi for several years, and when he was promoted to be the substitute of the chief rabbi, being that I was his student and I had a relation and a connection with him, and he felt that I might be able to help him, he took me in under his wings as a volunteer to work at the rabbinate. I came in the rabbinate the first day at 8 o'clock. I was at the time 15 and a half. By the time I finished that day at 7:30, I was 30 years old. I grew 15 years just watching the chaos, the fear that was installed from the rabbinate and from the amount of people wanted to run because of the devastation. The devastation was enormous. Most people in Egypt had no clue. But I became exposed to the heart of it. Nasser declared, all Jews in Egypt are spies. On media, newspaper. Overnight, my next-door neighbor was my best friend. The following day, I was his biggest enemy. This is what created the hatred. Nasser had to cover up for his losses. Israel came in 2 days from Israel into Suez. You know where Suez is? 50 miles from Cairo. Another 50 miles, the IDF, they take them out and throw them in the garbage. But America, you had John Foster Dulles here, Secretary of State, stopped them. He says, don't go any further. We'll make peace. He's going to allow you to go through the Suez Canal. That was the problem for us, because the hatred was already installed. They took close to 20,000 people, all the richest Jews, put them in jail, and the rest started to fear for their life. In the Haret El Yahud, which was the ghettos, we had 4,000 or 5,000 Jews there. They blew a bomb. 200 people were killed. They attacked the women. They raped them. They slit the throat of the children. This is what was happening in the poor section. The rich section was flying out. Then we had a problem. You know, we have Hakarat Tov, Hakarat Lev. We care for each other. As you see here tonight, we care for each other. Joseph is Syrian. He cares for the Egyptian. The Egyptian cares for Joseph. That's what unites us. That is the fact. So now that Rabbi Shweka had a bigger problem. If the rich Jews left, the poor Jews will not be supported. Who's going to support these people? That's the reason why today, from 85,000, you have 2 or 3 Jews left. My job first was to write certificate. This is what I went in as a volunteer. I go into the archives that date from 1830. They had started the archives. Deaths, weddings, births, bris, everything was written there. All I have to do is look for a folio, catch the family, issue a certificate, initial it, give it to the rabbi. The rabbi signed it. He trusts that I did the right job. So not only I was doing this, we were 7 boys doing this job, all volunteers. Within a month, the rabbi said, this has to stop. We need to remove all the 5,000 Jews out of Egypt immediately. So our job changed. Instead of just being researchers, he replaced us with other 5, 7 boys additional. My job with the others, we make the certificate, we go to the old quarters, we take the family, take them to the government, get them their exit visa, put them on the boat, and ship them out. We did that. We did that for 3 months. We took out almost 2,800 Jews out of Egypt in that fashion. The secret police came in one day in the rabbinate, spoke to the rabbis. This is against the country. You're against the best interests of Egypt. You don't stop, we put you all in jail. Why? Oh, because the Jews that you're sending to Cyprus, to Marseille, to reception center in Vienna, are going to go to Israel. They're going to come back as soldiers, and they know everything about Egypt. So in essence, you are helping the Israeli army to conquer, and that's what they did to us in Suez about just a few months back. You cannot do that. We stopped for 3 weeks. But the rabbi, again, Hakarat Lev, he's got to worry about these Jews because the rich are leaving, the poor will never leave. They have no means. They have no way to leave. They're helpless. So then we had to continue. How do we continue? He got a brilliant idea, but brought the Swiss Red Cross. Overnight, don't come here, Clement. Go to the Swiss Red Cross. You'll get a bandana. You'll get an ID with a picture. You can walk any place. You're now an employee. Don't ever come to the rabbinate. You go there. You know the job. You know what to go to the people. You know how to do that. Send them out. We continued. The Egyptian police and secret police were stunned. They didn't know what to do. We have protection from the Red Cross. So they hesitated. We took advantage of that hesitation and shipped as many as we could. In the interim, I was preparing for me to come to America because I was involved with Rabbi Kalmanovich already. I had my papers prepared. My visa was almost prepared. I was ready to leave. 3 days before leaving, 3 Mukhabarat met me at the metro and say, an officer wants to talk to you in the Caracol, in Heliopolis. I went with them to the Caracol of Heliopolis. But I said to them, can I just talk to my mother to tell her that I'm going to be wild for what? You can't. I said, okay, if you don't do that, I'm going to go. I started to go. They beat me up, hit with a gunman on my head. They pushed me into a car. They got me into a car. Now I am in the front of the Caracol in front of a young officer, a punk of about maybe 28, 29 years old. He wants to show off to Nasser that he got himself a spy. Now he tells me, listen, we warned you. We were in the rabbinate. We told you, you are an Egyptian citizen. You have an Egyptian nationality. You are responsible. The Red Cross, let me see your papers. He ripped it, threw it in the garbage, took the bandana. He says, you are our citizen here. We warned you. Now you better sign this paper. You are a spy. We told you you're going to be a spy. I said, I can't sign this paper. You can't sign? They took me on the side. They started to beat me on my legs with bamboo sticks. Sign the paper. I cannot sign. You know why? Because if I sign that paper, tomorrow morning I'm going to hang in a public square. Tomorrow morning. Besides that, my bigger fear, I didn't care about me anymore because I knew I was in big trouble. I didn't care, but I cared about my family. Because if I hang in a public square, my family would disappear. My brother, my mother, my sister, they will all be killed because I'm the spy. They're involved. I would not sign. You have to sign. In the meantime, the Red Cross was notified. And I need to tell you something very important. Hashem is wonderful. Hashem is the greatest. Every one of us have a portion. It's built in our DNA. He helps us. I'm going to tell you. As I was walking in the Caracol that morning, 2 police officers are on the guard on outside. Those 2 police officers, I knew them because they were my police officer in my shul. They were there every morning. I give them an apple. I give them a cookie. I give them some money. They were my friends. And I took care of them for maybe a year and a half. I walked into the Caracol. They looked at me. They were shocked. So they winked at me and I winked at them. But I could not do anything because they were inferior. These are superiors with stars with me. That's where we're going. This is secret police. So I went in there. Meantime, they ran and spoke to the Sheikh al-Hara, which is like the mayor of the area where we live. They told him Clement was taken in for interrogation. It's a problem for him. See if he can help him. Sheikh al-Hara loved my parents. So he went to my parents. My parents went to the Red Cross. The Red Cross said, it's impossible that the Egyptian government just does not ignore our protection. So they started working on with the Minister of Interior. Meanwhile, this officer was getting the word, the Red Cross is going to come and they can release this boy from you. So he needed to move at a speed of lightning to get me to sign. If I didn't sign, he lost a spy. So what he did, he took his gun, put 1 bullet in it, and played Russian roulette and come to my brain and say, are you going to sign? No. Click. Immediately. I can tell you, I don't wish it on a dog or an animal to feel what I felt. 1 bullet, I'm gone. But you know what? I felt it was good because if I go, at least I didn't sign, my family will not be hurt. My family will not be touched. So I said, I'll take the bullet. It wasn't there. 2nd bullet, wasn't there. 3rd bullet. Do you know where I was by the 3rd bullet? I promise you, you don't want to see it. You don't want to feel what I felt. On the third bullet, I said to Hashem, save me, you're the only one. Nobody can save me. You gonna have to save me, Hashem. You know what happened? A thought came into my mind. There is no bullets in that gun. He must have taken the bullet out as he was walking in back of me and around me. He took the bullet out. Why? Because if he had a bullet and he killed me, he lost the spy. I didn't sign the paper. He would have lost everything. So he took out the bullet just to scare me. So I was no longer scared of that gun. That gun was empty. So I didn't care. Within a minute and a half after that, the door opened up. The guy from the Red Cross with the Minister of Interior was there. Said, this boy, you got to release him. You cannot touch him. He was supposed to be working for the Red Cross. This is now an international problem you created for us. You got to release him.
Thank you, Clem. Thank you.
You want me to stop? Continue?
No, stop. Clem has plenty to say, but